네, 반갑습니다. A little shaking because I didn't expect this much audience here before came up here. I'm more like a lecture type instead of a speech type. Dr. Mueller delivered a great speech, but I deliver my my topic more like a lecture type. Okay, today we are talking about peace through sports. So before we talk about the peace through sports, we need to take a look at what Olympic movement and what Olympic charter and what Olympic legacy try to give us a lesson. I would like to just take a look at just a few keywords instead of reading all of these sentences. Okay, we can see the blue letters. Okay, sports, competitions, cooperation, sports for all, and equality, and opposition to all forms of commercial exploitation, and the fight against doping, and sports ethics and fair play, awareness of environmental problems, and support for developing countries. Okay, those are good words and positive words and the values that we need to pursue. Okay, could you go next? Okay, I just rearranged all the keywords appeared in Olympic Charter as well as Olympic movement. Okay, I put the word peace at the center because today's topic is peace through sports. So I put the word peace at the core, and around the peace there are several, many values. Even there are other values not written in this slide. So you can see the word respect and responsibility and empathy and passion, friendship. All the words that you can see in Olympic Charter as well as Olympic movement. Okay, let's go to next. Okay, so the strategy to embody those values is our goal, actually. So what they used to do is, firstly, they used to enforce the participants and athletes as well as the audience, not to break the rule, not to break the regulation, and not to break the code. So they provided those regulations and rules and the codes for all sports. That's the very usual and dominant way to keep the rules and keep our sports. Okay, whether these ways of enforcement could work or not at the bottom of the slide depends on how strict or how fair they are. So that's the sentence or concept we need to keep in mind to enforce them, not to break the rules, the regulations, and the codes. Okay, let's go to the next strategy. That's the very popular and dominant way to a positive way to people go to where we want to go. Okay, education. So IOC as well as even FIFA, they provided some kind of documents like Olympic movement and the Olympic value education, Olympic academy, programs and institutions and the institute. They provide all of these to educate them for to accomplish the values that we want to achieve. So I used to say to my students, I believe you can see the blue letters in the slide. There are four words, four verbs: encourage, envision, enable, and empower. That's the core concept of education. So we used to say, instead of just enforcing our students, our youngsters to not to do something, instead we used to say, okay, you can do it by encouraging them, or you can do it by envisioning them, or enabling them, or empowering them. So that's the core concept of education. And the IOC and the other sports organizations, they used to provide some kind of educational programs. So that's the second way. And the third strategy. So eventual dissemination. I participated in one of the members to decide who was entitled to get the Fair Play Award. So Fair Play Award, sloganeering, or reward, those ways, I classified those ways to eventual dissemination, which means IOC and the other sports organizations, they want to disseminate the values that we want to share and we want to pursue by cooperating with the media or working with other worldwide organizations like UNESCO. Okay, that's the third way. So I would say IOC, even other worldwide organizations, not even sports, they used to apply those three strategies to disseminate, to educate the people, included in that organizations, enforcement, eventual dissemination, and education. However, I would say there occurs still, as you can see, would you go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Yeah, you can see diverse violations have been occurred, like Hollywood action, violence, cheating, and doping, even bad manners from audience. So it happens, and it will happen. So we would say we are not, succeed. Yes. So we have some, some way to go. Okay, we should go to next. So the main goal of my presentation is the challenge that came to my mind is how do we embody these values in the venue, like the field, or track, court, ring, etc., including even the stand, which means the audience. The audience also need to be enforced sometimes, or sometimes be educated, or get ideas from the organizations or IOC or the documents, as I talked about before. Okay, let's go. Before I talk about this slide, I would say tell about the ultimate goal of social science. The reason that I talk about this because the social science, all the social scientists, they want to expect or they want to predict people's behavior. So I firstly want to provide or classify behavior like this, reasoned action, unreasoned action. And in reasoned action, the reasoned action could be divided by voluntary and involuntary, and unreasoned action could be divided by intentional and unintentional. As you can see the word in the slide, nudge theory and the theory of reasoned action. So actually the key concepts that I want to deliver in my lecture, in my speech, is about nudge as a force way. I already talked about three main or major strategies they used to share their ideas or concept or values, like education, enforcement, and dissemination. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, the first one, voluntary reasoned action. Okay, that's the very desirable way or very desirable behavior we want to pursue in Olympic movement. I believe the Koreans know what those pictures deliver to you. The first picture at the top is the one of the beaches in West Coast in Korea. It was polluted with the crude oil from the ship, leaked from the ship. And the second picture at the right-hand side is the volunteers. They came to the beaches by themselves without any enforcement. They just came by themselves with the volunteerism and they clean up all the rocks and the, small things, even everything in the beaches. And afterwards, the picture at the bottom, it's cleaned. Actually, scientists expected the pollution lasts about at least 30 years or 50 years. However, it's cleaned within 3 years with the volunteerism. So I would say, okay, volunteer action, volunteer behavior, that's the way that we want to go. However, it's very difficult to have our people having that kind of volunteerism in their mind. Okay, let's go to next. So they used to deliver some kind of incentives, money or fame or whatever it is. Sometimes they deliver extrinsic motivation, like as I said, money or financial support, and so forth. And sometimes they enforce them to not to do something that they want to go. They don't want to go, and legitimacy, like a nationalism. So those things can cause involuntary resistant action. But that's I would say a second choice that we can have. Okay, let's go to next. Unreasoned action. Okay, as I classified the behavior, the third one is unreasoned action. Sometimes unreasoned action occurs with the emotion-dominated behavior or nuisance-considered behavior. Sometimes it's caused by high competitiveness in the field or in the venue. Or sometimes it's caused by unconsciousness. They just ignore, or sometimes they do not recognize what they are doing. Or sometimes it could occur because of their habit. Habituated behavior causes their unreasoned action. Okay, next. Actually, this one is the key concept that I want to deliver in my speech. So, force way, nudge. I believe everybody heard of what nudge is. Like, would you go to the first slide? You can see the urinal at the right-hand side at the bottom. So, fly in the urinal. So, they used to explain nudge theory with the urinal, the fly in the urinal. Okay, let's go to the one that I was explaining. So now I think you can be reminded with the urinal and the fly. So nudge is another way to change people's behavior and action. So I would say we can implement the strategy of nudge in our behavioral change, program or education or even enforcement. Okay, why nudge? Because that can change people's behavior. That's the main reason. And not the theory, or already have been expanded, worldwide, because the scientists and the other researchers, they all agree and share the effect of nudge. So how we can apply the nudge into our behavioral change program or behavioral change strategies? Okay, here there are 5 strategies appeared in the research. We need to provide some kind of eye-level outcome, which means like fly in the urinal. So you try. So eye level outcome should be provided, and they expect eye level outcome, then they do what we expect them to do. And secondly, we can expect, people need to expect, timely, responsive outcome. I believe no one tried to point out the, flying the urinal anymore because, everybody knows it's a nudge. However, if it's responsive enough to take out some kind of action, then it can last long. So we need to some kind of responsive outcome for nudge. And we do not need to forbid any options given to them, which means we cannot restrict their choices when we provide nudge. And fourth one, we should not change any tangible or intangible incentives because of nudge. That's the fourth strategy when you try to implement a nudge strategy in the program or in your education for behavioral change. The last one, if the nudge you provided requires serious amount of time or effort or attention, they don't follow. They do not do the things you provided for nudge. The reason that I ask you to implement nudge theory or nudge program, nudge education in behavioral change programs and behavioral change strategies is because Olympism is not just a profound philosophy to be studied, but also it's a beliefs to be performed in our everyday life. Every way of behavioral change strategies need to be considered and implemented because we are not just talking about the athletes participating in the venue, also we are talking about the audience in the venue as well. So, I didn't provide any specific strategy for nudge. You can provide those nudges together. So I would suggest nudge theory is very valuable to be implemented in our behavioral change program in IOC or in other worldwide sports organizations. Thank you.